Well, welcome everybody. This is one of our monthly habit change webinars that Jeff and I have been doing, and this one is on goal setting. And I think you guys are going to enjoy our take on it because it's a little bit different, and it's constructed within a model that we have. My name is Chris Coward, and I am one of the co-creators with Jeff of the Habit Change Coach Training Program, and have been coaching for a long time, and also have an executive coach leadership development practice, as well as run the coaching services for a company called Apollo Health, which is focused on brain health, basically. And I'll just turn over to Jeff to introduce himself.
Yeah, so most of my days these days are spent with leadership development, working with senior leaders, and both sort of on an individual basis and a team basis, and doing consulting work. So definitely habits, different types of habits these days. Occasionally health habits creep in there as well. And as Chris said, we started this venture like 2006. I think Chris came on in 2007, perhaps.
Mm-hmm.
And here we are, we're still going. It turns out the desire to understand and be skillful at changing habits, there's still a need out there. So look, it just brings me, joy to be able to, every day if I can just kind of help one person, then I'm all in. So I appreciate the two of you showing up and holding the space today. I'm hoping one of you feels courageous enough, because I will need a volunteer at some point. So just keep that in the back of your mind. But yeah, so
yeah,
me.
Great. And Frank has been on a few of our monthly calls, and Barbara, I think this is your first. And Frank probably has noticed that each month Jeff and I kind of alternate on who does the heavy lifting with the presentation, and it's Jeff's turn. So I'm going to let him just dive in to the material, and I'll add color commentary as needed. And feel free, both of you guys, to ask questions, put things in the chat, and let this be interactive for you today.
So what I'm going to do is we're going to do an overview of what we call barriers to change, right? So what gets in the way when we try to create change, and then we're going to dive in, as Chris said, to one of those barriers, which is goal setting. But I know you're both in mute, which is the right thing to do right now, except that I'm about to start off by asking you to think, to engage for a minute. So I want you to think about the last time that you tried to create some new behavior. So either tried to stop doing a behavior or tried to start a new behavior, and you were unsuccessful. I'm not going to ask you what the behavior was, but I'm going to ask you what it was that got in your way. So if you could think about that, and then whenever you're prepared, if you could kind of unmute yourself and then just share, and Chris will ask you to engage as well. What was it that sort of got in your way as you might even made some progress initially, and then maybe found that it sort of backslid. So Frank, Barbara, Chris, I'm going to write this down, and this is my prompt. Hopefully it will feed into the theory that I want to try to share next. Barbara, looks like you're ready.
Sure. So I noticed yesterday, as I was sitting on the couch and not doing the thing that I wanted to do, that I'm feeling a strong sense of, I need a break. I just want to sit here.
So that's great. So let me ask you, actually. So then you took a break, and then did you do what you needed to do?
I did not.
Okay. And so at the end of, say, the day,
Mhm.
I'm successful with what you attempted to do that day, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And then just really quickly, can you tell me what feeling showed up for you after the fact? Like when you, either actually, quite frankly, Robert, either in that initial sort of struggle or later when you reflected where you hadn't done what you wanted to do?
Mm, so initially, I think it was, well, it would be great if I could just get up and do that thing now, but I I'm just really feeling tired.
Yeah.
And later, um, I didn't reflect on it too much, honestly.
Okay. So let me, and this is great. I really appreciate this. And let me just ask you one other question. If you were to do it, say tomorrow, again, I assume a weekend is a okay time. And is there any, and let's say you got adequate sleep, is there anything else that you would imagine getting in your way?
Um, that seems to be the main thing, is if I'm feeling that I just want to rest a little.
Yeah, fair enough. Okay. All right, I may come back to you with that rest thing, but for now I'll switch to Frank if he's ready. Thank you, Barbara. Appreciate it. Frank, can you mind chiming in here?
Sure. Well, when I try to do something, one thing I feel is I always don't know if I have if I don't know if I'm doing it correctly, or I feel like I'm always trying to pour more into learning to do it without actually getting anything done, even though I know it'd be better to do something not perfectly, but it ends up then I end up doing nothing at all.
Yeah, got it. Yeah. So it's that sort of perfectionistic mindset, right? Like if you can't go all in, then it's sort of like you don't even feel like it's worth the time or effort. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. Thank you very much. Chris, about you, anything? So,
Yeah, I'm thinking of something where I was like wanting to go whole hog and consistent and follow the habit, and finding that I wasn't upholding it because something else that I also cared about. I was going towards that, and so it's like, yeah, I want to do this instead, and for my reasons that I had. And probably the feeling when I did that, because I just knew I wasn't honoring this other commitment I made, was I was pissed off at myself, because I thought I this is, I'm making this choice and it's not the one that's honoring what I want to do.
that's great. Thank you very much. So for me, it was, quite frankly, I wasn't willing at that moment to make the sacrifice, to do what I wanted to do. And so this is great. The background of this is that so in some ways, I guess, depending on how you define it, I've been helping people change habits for 36 years. And over time, as we were kind of developing the model, was the work that we do, obviously, is helping people change habits. And, so really forcing myself to look at what gets in the way. Like, why can't we just change our habits? If we want to do something, why don't we just do it? Through experience, it basically 7 buckets showed up, right? And so then initially it was 5, and then over time it was like, oh wait, there's sort of 2 more. And what we would do is, anytime like Chris and I would do a workshop or we would do a training, I would always ask, what I just asked everybody here, and then invariably we would be able to put it in these, buckets. And so what I want to do is I want to share what those buckets are, and recognize there's actually part of the model is then once you identify what the barrier is, like the solution is right there. Like the solution is actually quite simple once you get clear what the barrier is. And then our coaches that work with folks around habit change, like we train them to figure out what's the barrier, and then we teach them sort of what to do next. But before I go there, I want to spend a couple minutes, Frank and Barbara and Chris and others, just others like those that are like emotionally here but not physically here.
Yeah.
On the recording. I want you to sort of appreciate kind of what happens when we try to change behavior, right? And I'll give you sort of an example. Let's say someone is trying to, I don't want to say lose 20 pounds, right? And so, kind of what are the two big habit areas that they look at: exercise and what they put into their body, right? Eat and drink, right? And so let's say that they're 50 pounds overweight, right? And they've kind of been overweight for, say, most of their adult life, but they're just trying to lose 20 pounds. And so we all know what happens, right? So they, for whatever reason, it's January 1st, or they went to their doctor, or the scale like went to a particular place that it hadn't gone before, or they could no longer even fit into the new clothes that they bought that were like the bigger size clothes. For whatever reason, like they had this desire, right, for a different outcome, right? And so, for that minute, quite frankly, it's usually about a week or two, but there's a motivation to do something different. So they head out and they, begin to eat different, or, and they start exercising. And then what happens, first of all, what they usually do is if their baseline is I haven't exercised for 3 years and I try to make good choices, but I don't really put any limits on what I eat. And then they try to go to exercising 3 days a week, or, really doing kind of eating how they should. That's guaranteed failure, right? Because it's such a huge jump. But the piece I really want to share with you that I think that might be new way of thinking for you is that, there's this sort of myth, right, that our behavior produces results, right? So we behave in ways that then produce results. I eat whatever I want and I don't exercise and I gain weight. Now, obviously, when it's surfaced, like, that's hard to argue. But the idea here is that there's actually something else that feeds into the behavior that then produces results, meaning that we behave in ways based on this something else, right? So our behavior is sort of automatic. It's habits. We're in that habit of eating whatever we want, or we're in the habit of eating ice cream before we go to bed, or we're in the habit of like not exercising, or whatever it is. The reason we do that is because something else, and that something else is called self-image, right? So how we see ourselves, the sum total of all our thoughts and all our images, that feeds into our behavior, that feeds into the result. So here's an example. So we'll call this person John, right, who's trying to lose weight. So John, say, shops at the Tall and Big store. He knows the associate, he's really good, good relationship with the sales guy that always, sells him the clothes. John grew up, where, you don't leave any food on your plate. There's always dessert. John hangs out with his buddies, like every Friday they go out and they just like drink all this beer. John, gets on the scale and always expects it to be, more than it, he wants it to be. There's a system of how John sees himself. There's not just how he sees himself, his thoughts, his feelings, and his behaviors, going to the Tall and Big store, going out with his friends, eating everything on his plate. All of this is what leads him to the behavior that produces a result. So when John says, I'm going to lose weight, he is challenging that entire system, right? Like that whole system that makes up how he sees himself. So sure, he can be successful briefly while he's, quite frankly, thinking about it, while he's conscious of it. But what inevitably is going to happen when you challenge the system of how you see yourself is the ego is going to resist the change. In fact, what it's probably going to do is it's like a rubber band that's been pulled back, right? And then you finally release the rubber band and you end up overshooting. In other words, you end up not only, in this case, regain the weight, but you actually gain a little bit more just in case you try to do that again, right? We act in ways that are consistent with our self-image. And we will not create sustainable change until we change the way we see ourselves. And there's only two ways of doing that. One way is you actually go head on and challenge the thoughts and images of how you see yourself, which is, we'll save that for another time. And the other way is to do it externally through these very small steps that Chris talked about last month, right? But in order to be successful around the small steps, which, by the way, you eventually you still need to change self-image, but you can get there initially by taking these small steps. In order to do that, you need to set really clearly defined goals.